I want to thank you, first of all, for giving up your Sundays, and you'll be down here on Monday too, I understand. And you know, part of your job as board members and administrators is to literally try to pull out some hope from pessimism, and that's very important in this time. I also want to say that my kids, I have two kids, and they went to Greenwood Elementary School in Seattle, and Eckstein and Hamilton Middle School, and Ballard High School. And they are doing very well as adults, and they were very well prepared by the public education system in Seattle, in our state. And so, you know, I'm a big fan, and it shows that I think we all should be big fans of our public education system. So I want to talk a little bit about the fiscal crisis that we're in now and how that impacts education, but not just talk about the sort of the pessimistic aspects of that, but how this opens up doors for us to reform our tax system so that we can adequately fund public education. So this is investing in our future. And the first question is why we have taxes, and we know that this is from the Constitution, is obviously we have access to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and promote the general welfare. And that's from our own U.S. Constitution. Obviously, in our state, why we have taxes, it's the paramount duty of the state to provide for the education of all children. And frankly, if you just take it a little step higher, you know, without taxes, you don't have the public funding for a democracy. So if we believe in democracy, we have to figure out a way to bring in robust and appropriate public revenues, which we're not doing right now. So it's not just the recession. We know the recession, the state budget was cut by $3.4 billion last year. Part of that hit was taken by K-12 education. Now we're looking at a $2.6 billion, another shortfall. But even before that, if you look at our rank in state spending, we've fallen more and more. In fact, here we go, I don't know what's wrong. Anyway, I think you all know this, that we have fallen down to, we're in the 37th state, we're the 37th state in terms of spending on kids, and that's fallen significantly over the last decade. And it's not just K-12 education, because remember, you know, part of K-12 education is to prepare our kids to go to community college and four-year institutes. And you can see that in terms of state appropriations, in 80 and 81, the state was providing about 75% of the cost of tuition, the cost of education in our research universities, and it fell to 68% in 85, 86, and fell further, and then by this time it's down to less than 40%. So the state has pulled back funding for what has been a public good, that is higher education. At the same time, they're starting to defund K-12 education. When I went to Evergreen, I think I paid $144 a quarter for tuition. That amount of tuition in real terms has gone up over 300%. So you think about what that means, that a student graduating from the University of Washington now has an average debt load of about $17,000. A low-income student has an average debt load of over $18,000. Think about that when you start out in your working life and you're pulling along this tremendous debt, and then you're expected to have the money figure out how to purchase a house, or get child care for your children, or save for retirement. The dream of middle class economic security and quality of life and advancement has been undermined over the last 30 years. Here's, for example, if you look at median income for the University of Washington, it was 6.3% in 1991. For community colleges, it was 2.7% of the median household income. And by 2008, It was 11.5% at the University of Washington. That's for one kid of the household median income. And then we have this other problem, which obviously is we have a greater and greater proportion of people who are living longer, which is good, but costing more in terms of public services, and we're not really prepared for that. And one of the reasons we're not prepared for that is that we have a shrinking tax base. So this is what we have. This is our tax base right now. As you can see, we have the sales tax, which brings in about more than half of our revenue. The business tax, that's the B&O tax, business and occupations tax, which brings in about 20% of revenue. The state portion of the property tax, which brings in about 10% of revenue. There's something missing here. And if you can see, one of the problems is that with the sales tax, because the sales tax is mainly on goods, and our economy is shifted from a goods-producing economy to a service economy, then fewer and fewer sales are actually subject to the sales tax. So the sales have dropped from over 61% that are subject to 45% in 2003, and they have fallen even more since then. So we have, I think you're all probably aware of this, the most regressive taxes of any state. Here's our state. This is, so the bottom 20% of families, those families making approximately $35,000 a year or less, pay about 17% of their total income in state and local taxes. The middle 20%, so these are folks who are right around $65,000, pay about 11%, and the top 1% pays a little more than 2% of their income in taxes. Compare that to Delaware, which is probably the has the best state, where the bottom 20% pay about 6% of their income in taxes, and the top 1% pay about 5%. But it's not just Delaware. You can compare it to the progressive state of Idaho. So here you have Idaho. You know, we don't really think about Idaho as a progressive state, but look at this. If you're in the bottom 20%, you're paying about 8.3% of your income in terms of state and local taxes. If you're in the top 1%, you're paying about 6%. California is another example. It's pretty good. And as you all know, in Oregon, about 2 weeks ago, they passed a tax which increased the taxes on the highest income earners of households over $500,000. So now they're paying 11%, and that ballot measure passed with a 53% majority. And this is the U.S. average. So you see, we're sort of out of kilter. So you wonder, well, let's take a look at this. If you look at, there's also this idea that the state is spending more and more money. People like to say that we're spending more and more money. But, you know, as the state grows, you know, you probably heard that we're going to get a 10th congressional seat in the next census. So why did that happen? It's because we got more people in this state. So we have to spend more and more public money if we're going to provide for the education of all children, a decent transportation system, a good social and health system, and a good higher education system. And in fact, one of the myths we have of spending is that as people make more money, they're less dependent on public expenditures. It's not really true. If you make more money, you're apt to live in a household with, instead of one car, you might have 2 SUVs. That says something about how much you drive and the roads you drive on. If you make more money, you're apt to expect that your children will be going to the University of Washington. That means that the state's going to be spending more money for college tuition for your children. And so in a number of areas, actually, as you get more money, you're going to be expecting, as you should, that there will be public support for your children and the quality of life.